Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. In the last week since the Hogue report came out on foreign interference, there's been a lot of pundit chatter about how we need to clean up our nomination races, because one of the comments that Justice Hogue made was that nomination contests could be seen as a gateway for foreign interference, based pretty much entirely on what happened in Don Valley North, with a few vague references to some other possible contests in the Vancouver area. But I'm kind of struck wondering if this isn't perhaps a case where the legal aphorism of hard cases make bad law is coming into play. And partially what I mean by that is that nomination contests are internal party matters, and it's going to be very difficult to try and find some kind of an external oversight mechanism for them. And if someone thinks that just having Elections Canada run nomination contests, I think is probably a bit naive or a bit mistaken as to what that would entail, because there are not just 4 or 5 political parties in this country, there are literally hundreds. And if you have Elections Canada monitor nomination contests for every single political party in this country, that would be a massive expansion of both the agency as well as its staff and its reach in terms of what kinds of aspects they're doing when it comes to elections. And I think that that's probably something a little more than what anyone would reasonably ask for. Also considering that Elections Canada really has very little in the way of accountability and oversight on their own, given that they report to Parliament, and it's hard to see how disputes around nomination contests, where they might allege things that are happening that may not be familiar or whatnot, wind up being disputed and having a lot more problems. I think we would find ourselves in a place where we would be creating more problems than we're solving. Now, this isn't to say that there aren't problems with nomination contests, because there very much are. And a lot of this, however, goes back to the way in which centralized power has been accumulated in the leaders' offices of political parties. Samara Canada did a really great report called Party Favors, which looked at nomination contests for several election cycles and found that a whole lot of them were being manipulated by party leaders' offices. The report has its flaws because they took the NDP's nomination data at face value, and at least one of those election cycles, there was a lot of stuff in there that was not open nominations like the NDP were claiming. So some of those numbers don't sound as bad as they really were. But nevertheless, the report as a whole really shows how much these contests have been taken over by the party mechanism. And this all goes back really to what I term the original sin in Canadian politics, which was when we changed the leadership model from caucus selection to membership selection, first through delegated conventions and then through one member, one vote, and so on. So part of what we need to remember is that there really should be kind of a tension between the parliamentary party and the constituency party. But because of the way in which we have so overpowered the party leader, the parliamentary party has pretty much overtaken the constituency party. And the constituency party is really what is supposed to be doing the nomination contests, the policy development, those kinds of things, which are, and really the governance of the party itself. And those things have all been subsumed by the party leader and the party leader's office, most especially in the last couple of decades. But it was a slow burn getting up there, and then suddenly a massive acceleration of the accumulation of that power. So much so that, for example, the Liberals rewrote their party constitution somewhere, I want to say 2016, 2017, which basically did away with most of the checks and balances within the constituency party and put everything into the leader's office. And that was a giant mistake, but they were too enamored with the notion that they needed to be more nimble. And so we're kind of at a place where we are now. I also remember that in 2015, everyone was like, open nominations, open nominations, open nominations, all of the parties. And suddenly it became, well, we are going to protect nominations for incumbents. And then slowly but surely, more and more contests became essentially the leader would parachute candidates in or select candidates without an open nomination. And we've had some problems with some of those candidates in the time since. And these are all reminders as to why the local control of nomination contests is what really matters. And I have to kind of wonder if part of what we've seen, and for example, for Don Valley North, is as a result of the fact that the ability of the local constituency to control the nomination, how eroding that power kind of allows these other problems with, say, foreign interference to creep in. Because if the local constituency association has been so weakened by centralized interference, what that winds up doing inevitably is reducing its ability to kind of give a check of its own membership in a way that they would better control their own nomination process. This isn't to say that what possibly happened there may have been an issue in terms of the possibility that agents of the Chinese government told these students to all vote for Han Dong. Allegedly, there's been no proof either way of any of this. But again, that kind of interference could only happen in a very small number of ridings across the country as well, just because of the nature of how diasporic communities are situated around the country. And again, if you're trying to make new rules or new oversight for these very exceptional circumstances, you end up creating a lot more problems for all of the other ridings around the country where this could not possibly happen. And therefore, wind up overcomplicating things and creating extra processes and extra complications that don't need to exist. And this is one of the real problems that Canadian politics has, is rather than going back to first principles, we always add new things and new complications and new processes and make things even more complicated and take longer and inevitably find new ways of subverting these new processes rather than going back to, like I was saying, first principles in terms of, what is the grassroots democracy? What is the grassroots party? What is the grassroots riding association? Those kinds of things where they were empowered and they had a lot more control at the local level and could have been essentially more readily able to sniff out problems because they were more invested in the local issue from their perspective. And this all kind of goes back to stuff that I write about in here about why the original design of our system matters and why we can't keep adding new things onto it and then expecting it to work the way it should, because we're just adding new things that don't work and complicate the system and bog the system down. And that's kind of gotten us to where we are right now. I think if we really want to tackle this problem, we need to really kind of go back to those first principles. We need to get out of this notion of the the way we're selecting leaders, so that the leader is no longer able to exert the amount of power they have over things like nomination contests or policy development in parties. By re-empowering the constituency party, I think that has the potential to do far more to combat any potential foreign interference than the current system, where everything has become so centralized and where the leader is trying to essentially manipulate things around the country, and to which then allows other people to attempt to manipulate on their own, because of the way in which the central party is trying to exert control. It's not an easy fix. It's in fact extremely difficult, because we have to roll back a lot of the things that we've been doing for the last 2, 3, 4 decades, when we started making the system that much incredibly worse. But as far as I can see it, this is the real way that we're going to get to the root of the problem, and to find solutions within the framework of how our system is supposed to operate. It's, like I said, it's not going to be easy. It's going to require a lot of energy and push from the grassroots in order to re-exert the control that they are supposed to have at that level of the system. This isn't something that can be top down. It's got to be something that's got to be bottom up, and that's going to be incredibly difficult. But I really don't see any other way as to how we can really fix the system otherwise. And we're going to hear a lot of pundits go on about, well, we really should just let, Elections Canada do more. But that's not really a solution. That's just creating more problems. So, like I said, this is just one more tick in the column of it's time to take back, for the constituency party to take back its power from the leader, and that means changing how leaders are appointed, are chosen and fired, and that will help bring back the local autonomy at the grassroots level, which is what's really necessary to have a better chance at fighting against these kinds of interference attempts. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. It's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.